Hey everybody, it's Matthew of Mr. Domestic, and in this video I am going to go behind the curtain and show all of you how to take bomb-tastic photos for social media, specifically Instagram, since that's the medium where you use photography the most. And I have some tips and tricks that I learned when I used to be a professional photographer. For those of you who don't know, I used to work professionally in front of and behind the camera, so I learned a lot of tricks that I implement all the time on Instagram, and it doesn't take me having a fancy pants camera. I have my iPhone, that's what I'm going to be using for most of the video when I show you, but for now, I'm going to show you behind the scenes what this looks like. So I have my Diva light, and then I have my camera right there, but I have two windows right there. I am lucky. So everything I do is this way, and it automatically creates correct white balance and the picture looks great. So that's tip number one. Tip number one is white balance. If you don't know what that means, in lay terms, any kind of camera, any smartphone for the most part is set up with the intelligence to detect white balance. So what it's going to do is try to find the white point in the photo. I'm wearing a white shirt on purpose because I know that white balance is going to be perfect. I don't have to worry about it. It's a pronounced thing. That's why if you're on Instagram, you'll see a lot of photos that people take in a white background because it's easy, white balance. They may or may not understand why those photos look better, but white balance is on point. So if you want to create white balance that's appropriate, the first thing you need to do is every lamp that you have in your room where you take your photos, you need to switch them to daylight or LED lights. They produce a pure white light, whereas most of the lights that homes and buildings come with are like a yellow cast, and it adds a yellow cast to all of your photos. So the first thing is change all of your bulbs. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You can go to Home Depot, get some industrial bulbs. You can go get just the daylight, and I'll put a picture right here so you know what those look like. But first of all, change all of your bulbs to that. That in itself will exponentially better your photos and make it a lot easier and eliminate a lot of the stress that maybe you're encountering when taking your photos. So that's number one, white balance. It has to be the right light. So that's for indoors. For outdoors, I have a little trick that I'm going to show you in my house because I wanted to show you the different things that light will do and why this spot is my favorite spot in the morning. In the afternoon, the light changes, but I'm going to go here and see all the weird stuff that happens when you get direct sunlight. It's just different. There's shadows are more pronounced. It's not as crisp. But then when I go into the shaded area, like the sun is still in front of me, but the shaded area, it gets everything right. So the white balance is corrected. So I'll show you, I'm gonna flip it around and show you what it actually. Photographer, that anytime there's like an overhang like that, depending on where the sun is, if you find a shaded spot like this, it's shaded, and the sun is all that way, that it's going to have directional way, so it's perfect for photography. So if you have bigger things or you're trying to take pictures of yourself, then find an overhang when it's sunny outside in a shaded area and use that directional light. So white balance, yay. If you get nothing else from this video and you just understand white balance, then you're ahead of the game from most people on Instagram. Why is it important? Because what white balance provides is the photo will look like what you see through your eyes. So it's the real view of whatever you're trying to take a picture of. Anything off balance will look different. That's why you might look at a photo and it looks wrong or off. It's because the white balance is off. So that's why that's important. So tip number two has to do with exposure. And it's not like, hey, repost me, let me get some exposure. It is the exposure of a photo. And if you follow the steps with the white balance and have one source of light or one type of light, then you're going to be fine. Where exposure goes wrong is whenever a section of it is overexposed. And that generally happens whenever you have two different type of light sources. Like let's say you're outside and you're taking a photo, and I'll show you some examples here. You're taking a photo and you snap it, and in the background, it's like sun. And in the foreground, it's in the shade. What that would do, it's still trying to find the white, right? So it would expose the background, find the white because that's where the sun is, and then the foreground would be very, very dark. Then if you try to like alter it in editing, what's going to happen is the background will be overexposed and it won't look like a good photo. So make sure that it's one light source and not varying light sources. And if you're not a professional photographer, don't try to get all clever with the light. Something that I see a lot of is people are trying to like do artistic shots with light where like there's a trickle of light or a little bit of light, and that throws off white balance and exposure, and don't mess with that. For the most part, no one's really gonna appreciate it, and it's just gonna make the photo look a little off. So just make sure that your exposure is correct. If you have to adjust it a little bit, it's fine, but make sure whenever you do edit it, not to overexpose it because that will make the photo look. And the third tip has to do with composition. Okay, so this is just the basic square that is Instagram. You can now do horizontal or vertical. I would suggest never doing horizontal because it's less area for people to scroll through and they might miss it. Vertical, I do that every other photo or so. But this is the basic square. So this is what you're working with. Let's say you're going to take a photo. And like I want to show this block, right? So the standard thing would be put this here, take a photo, call it a day. Yay, it's beautiful. But it's like, how can you jazz this up? There are a couple ways. The first deals with composition. And if you've been on Instagram and you see the grid, you might not understand what it means. I'm totally eyeballing this, so if it's not exactly thirds, sorry about it. But this is based on something called the Fibonacci spiral or Fibonacci number, which is a mathematical equation that basically like explains why certain things are beautiful. Like our body has it, a lot of things in nature have it. And so that's what this is based upon. So watered down, this grid achieves the same thing. So don't worry about Fibonacci until you tackle this. I did okay. It's okay. So you see these lines, right? Many of you might not know what to do with them, but for photography, when you put something center, you look at it, you're done, it's really quick. But when you move it askew, like here, this would be off. So I've moved this askew. It's just more visually interesting. It looks more interesting to the eye. So what the eye would naturally do, it looks center, and then it would look around this square to see what else is going on, and then it would land on the main event. So use this, like move it different places, explore it. If you have a lot of items, like you can put one here, you can put one here, you can put one here, like, and then maybe put something there just for it to be off. Put this there. You want things to be balanced. Like you don't want everything over on one side. You want some things just to show some balance, organic balance, boom, boom, using the tips. So that is basic composition. Don't have everything be straight in the center. Use the entire square to entice the eye to move around the frame and look at other things that are going on. So the fourth tip that I'm going to share is just to tell a story with your photo. That if you take something that you've made, put it on a white background, snap a photo of it. It's a good photo, but it's not going to hit that empathy button. It's not going to pull on those heartstrings of people who are watching. And that is something that grabs someone's attention, and they're not really aware of why that grabs their attention. But this is honestly a little more difficult than the other steps because it takes some planning and thought. And one way to tell a story with like a smaller item is with the staging, other elements that you put in there that will help tell the story of whatever that make is or that project is, so that the viewer will be like, oh, you definitely want some ohs in your photos. So I'm going to show you now how to change something with some clever staging. So staging. So if I were taking this photo, I would put this here. It's okay. It's fine. But to give people that, oh, you want to create a story. So I'm just grabbing stuff around my room that I happen to have to create a story. Then here I have a seashell. I've got this, maybe this. Right there would help tell a story. And then maybe I would tease with another block and put this one here. Just to tease it. And the square would be this, this, and I'll show you a snapshot of it so you can see what picture I would have posted on Instagram had I done this. But just taking a little time, personalizing it, telling a story, using this will help. I'll give you one more example. Okay, so same thing. I'm clearly on a hexagon kick. So that's standard picture. People will take it. It's cute. Maybe you'd work some angles. But then let's move it here. And then create a story. So I want to entice crocheters and to understand that I am a crocheter, come crochet with me. Maybe I'd add a hook somewhere, like a different color of thread right here, just to make it more interesting. Maybe add this one straight, put this one askew, just change it up, and then something right here would look super cute. I don't know, why not? A little bracelet. A little bracelet here, just to fill it, and people will know that I love rainbows and stuff. So, boom, it's automatically more interesting. You should take a little bit more time and thought when planning the story that you're wanting to tell, but this is way more visually interesting than just that. The fifth tip and final tip is all about changing the angle. It's very obvious to take a photo flat. I know flat lays are hot. People love the flat lays. Went through a phase of that. And that's where everything is like two-dimensional. You take a picture overhead. But explore with the angles. I'll show you off camera now what I'm talking about. So the best way for me to show you the difference between like flat or two-dimensional and using an angle is in my weaves. Like this in itself is a cool photo. It would get engagement. It would get attention just because it's different. But a lot of times then I'll bring the camera down and it's just more dynamic this way. It looks more interesting. People might not know exactly what it is. It might attract some people who aren't makers. And it's just different. So just play around trying to utilize the layout and paying attention to the matrix just to see what's better. Like that is such a cool photo compared to straight. This also works for like any item. See, okay, people would know what it is. It's fine. But then it's like you bring it down and look at how much more interesting that is. Like using the angles. You can play around just to see which one looks the most awesome. This is probably where I would take it, put it in the square, and boom. So make sure to explore those angles and have some fun. So yay, I finally done it, and I've shared some of my most useful tips and tricks for getting bombastic Instagram photos that will take you to the next level and increase your exposure and get the attention. So if you have anything to add, whether it's a question or something, put it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, got a tip or a trick, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It's super duper fun. And if you're only experiencing me here on YouTube, you're missing out on a lot of the party over on Instagram and Facebook. Just spell it out the same, M-I-S-T-E-R, domestic, and you'll find me over there. So keep it positive, y'all. Mr. Domestic out.